Good evening. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight on this early spring evening. My name is Jean Canosa Albano. I'm the Assistant Director here at the Springfield City Library, and it is so wonderful to have so many amazing people in this room tonight as we celebrate our fourth My Beloved Springfield. I get to thank a lot of people who helped make this evening possible. The planning committee included library staff Victoria Palmatier. And folks, raise your hand if you're in the room when I mention your name. Marissa Reichart, Maureen Tipton, Ginny Tribulsi, and the committee also include community members Karen Hansman, Amy Marecki, Linda O'Connell, and Gladys Oyola. Tonight's My Beloved Springfield 2019 is underwritten by the Friends of the Springfield Library and co-sponsored by Women United, an initiative of the United Way of the Pioneer Valley. And we're also co-sponsored by Simply Serendipity, which is a delightful shop in downtown, beautiful downtown Springfield. I hope you'll have visited the tables, all of the tables from the shops, from Women United, from the Girl Scouts, and from the Professional Women's Chamber of Western Massachusetts. Did any other table arrive that I am not aware of? Did I see another hand? No. Okay, all right. Well, that's an important part of our evening because we know that we as girls and women are looking for ways to develop our leadership skills and ways to give back. And so there's some great opportunities here. Entrepreneurship in your profession, through philanthropy, and so forth. A couple of housekeeping notes. There is a restroom towards the back of the room, modeled by the amazing Jamila Vernon, who's also part of the planning committee, and we wouldn't be here without her either. As you can see, Focus Springfield is filming tonight, and will be editing and putting this on air pretty soon and on their YouTube channel very soon. So look for that on Channel 12 and on Focus Springfield's YouTube page. We have a great team here from Focus Springfield, Brendan, Mimi, and Yesenia, who are behind the controls and the cameras. I have someone from the New England Library Association here, Andrea, fellow librarian, and she is going to be live tweeting the event. Yes, so if you want to interact, feel free. Look for that, for the hashtag #MyBelovedSpringfield, and I'm trying to spread the word about using the mic and about capitalizing words in hashtags, making things more inclusive. So when it's time for Q&A, I'm going to ask you to either come to the mic or use one of the index cards that you have at your chair. And Marissa just held some up. She'll be collecting them and delivering them to Linda. So if we use that, then everyone will be able to hear, including the recording, but also everyone in the room should be able to hear through the microphone. We did reserve some seats for people who want to come to the microphone, so that's right where Marissa is sitting. And then if you do want to ask your questions that way, I'll just ask you to file into those seats when it's time after the panel, and then you'll be able to come right up to the microphone. So our inspiration for My Beloved Springfield all these years was the visit to Springfield by Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor in 2015. In a partnership with the Springfield Public Forum, we at the library were able to offer not one but two book discussion groups discussing her memoir, My Beloved World. And who among us was at that book group? Any of us here? Ashanta? Lydia, Linda. I'm seeing Maddie in the back as well. So we had, and was facilitated by Haiti Lamberti Rodriguez, and she led us in through a discussion of that amazing memoir, and we were inspired by the justices, her words and everything that inspired her. She was driven by a passion for education, commitment to giving back, a belief in the power of mentoring and being mentored, and a strong belief that with diversity, we are more powerful, effective, peaceful, all the good things you can think of. So that is what has inspired our program. We took a poll in the Facebook event and asked folks, what has helped you most in growing as a leader? And it's really not too late to take the poll. If you want to visit the Facebook page, Springfield City Library, you can look at the pinned post and get in there and take the poll, or just search for My Beloved Springfield, or just think about what your answer is and how it relates to what you're going to hear tonight. But what helped poll respondents most in growing as a leader was seeing people like me in leadership, followed up by networking, reading books and articles, training, and having a mentor. So seeing people like me in leadership was number one, and that's why each year the Civic and Community Engagement team who put together My Beloved Springfield for you, we've intentionally presented an inclusive panel, allowing attendees to see people like them in leadership. So let's quickly revisit their names. And some of you are in the room tonight, so please raise your hand. Haiti Lamberti Rodriguez, Carla Travieso, Rochelle Riney, Dr. Arlene Rodriguez, Kateri Walsh, and Feng Chao in 2018. The Reverend Catherine Cummings, Chrissy Howard, Tahir Amatul Wadud, Natasha Clark, Yvette Ramos, and Decker Rogers-Tung in 2017. And that night was right here in this room. We honored two pioneering librarians, Mrs. Betty Webb and Mrs. Sylvia Humphrey-Spann as well. And in 2015, we started off the series with Elizabeth Cardona, Alicia Days, Dawn Leaks, Olga Pedraza, Linda O'Connell, and Elizabeth Barajas Roman. So many inspirational women. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce to you one of these inspirational women, Linda O'Connell, who returns to us tonight as our moderator. Linda is a revolutionary woman who is always evolving. Her leadership journey has come full circle from founding the Valley Advocate to writing about the arts in a brand new cultural section on the Western Mass Politics and Insight website and blog. Linda has extensive board and political experience. She was the power behind the reestablishment of League of Women Voters Springfield after her graduation from the Women Fund's Leadership Institute for Political and Public Impact. Any other alum? All right, yeah, Lippy in the house.
Hey, Lippy.
So tonight, Linda is going to return to My Beloved Springfield as our moderator. And I know there's some folks who are by the door. I'm just wondering if we could invite them to come in and take a seat, if they'd like, before we start our panel discussion. Please do join us. Any open seat. I know you'll be more comfortable. Welcome, V. Well, Linda, thank you so much for being our moderator tonight, and I'm so excited for this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. It is so amazing to be here after all these years. I think that this is a fabulous continuing gathering for all of us. I can just really feel the energy, and I want to say I can feel the love in the room, both for our city and I think for each other here. So thank you all, audience, for coming. Our panel will last until about 7, and then we will take questions. If we're really, really engaged, I can be a little flexible on that. So don't be watching your watch, but just have an idea about how long we will go. So first, I would like to welcome again and introduce our panel panelists to you. All of their bios, their full bios, are in your programs, but I would like to just have you hear who they are and connect them with their descriptions, with their faces. So next to me is China-Li Chanvong. China-Li is a Springfield High School student. She goes to Sabas, and she has already raised her voice to make an impact in her community. She is a co-founder of the nonprofit organization March for Our Lives Springfield, which has taken action to combat our national gun violence epidemic. Under China-Li's leadership, the group has organized rallies, marches, and educated our state legislators. Next to China-Li is Laura Masulis. Laura serves as the Transformative Development Fellow. I love that title. The Transformative, think about it, Development Fellow in Springfield for MassDevelopment, which is Massachusetts Economic Development and Finance Authority. She's working here with community partners to build us a vibrant, more vibrant, I think we can say now, downtown. Laura has also served with other organizations focused on revitalizing communities, and you may know her as the co-founder for Make It Springfield, our growing community maker and skill sharing space downtown. Laura has a certificate in nonprofit management from Boston University, and she is a Leadership Pioneer Valley graduate. Any Leadership Pioneer Valley graduates here? Okay, Laura, you're holding the fort for Leadership Pioneer Valley. And next is Lydia Martinez. Lydia Martinez Alvarez, Assistant Superintendent of the Springfield Public Schools. She is the first Latina to serve in this position. Lydia grew up in the city's North End. She began her career as a Springfield Public Schools substitute teacher 24 years ago. So there's the journey. As you can see in the program, Lydia is widely recognized for her achievements. And she is also a doctoral candidate at American International College. She's not done yet. And then finally, we have Ruby Maddox. Now, Ruby is a consultant, speaker, workshop facilitator, dedicated to helping individuals cultivate their potential for meaningful contributions to society. Well put. I love that. She has spent more than 15 years working in the field of nonprofit management and philanthropy. She is co-founder of, you know these, Gardening the Community and Leaders of the Free World, all right, both of which, of course, are focused on social justice, leadership, and equity. And Ruby has received numerous awards and recognition. Thank you, Ruby. So now, here's the panel. I would love, just for a moment, to help the panelists get to know you, audience, and audience get to feel who's in the room. So I would just love to ask you a few questions. Would you just raise your hand. How many of you are here because you support women? Good, all right. We're in good company. And how many of you are here because you care about Springfield? Yes, okay. Now, a little more thoughtful, how many of you work inside your homes supporting your families? Inside your homes supporting your families. I bet you all do, but some do that. I know women. Some do that exclusively. The trick was, some do that exclusively. And so then how many of you work outside your home in other endeavors? Okay, fine. So just a few more. Are there any educators here? Teachers, educators? How about people who work in the healthcare field? Okay, a few healthcare folks. How about anyone who works for a nonprofit organization? Aha, interesting. How about someone who just works in business in general? Finance, retail, okay, got some business folks. And how many people are ready to learn from each other here? All right, now this is you. That is your job. So panelists, we know that the goal here is for you to share your unique experiences and your perspectives so that our wonderful audience can leave feeling enlightened, inspired, and ready to make change. So I would like to give people a little deeper picture as they listen to you answer these questions about who you are and what you're actually doing in the world right now. So if you would remind us of what you do and just share a brief description, a minute or so, of what a typical day following your chosen pursuits looks like for you now. What do you do? Chinally, let's start with you.
So currently I am a senior at Sabas, which is kind of right down the road. So an average day mainly begins, I wake up at 5:30 and head to school. 31 days more left, yay! And right after school, I actually am a current intern at MassMutual, where I've been working there for the summer will be the past 3 years as a project management intern. So I go to work after school, and after that, I usually come home, fix myself something to eat, and then I hop on my laptop, and it's time to find the next issue to tackle with March for Our Lives Springfield. Recently, last month, we actually held a vigil for the Parkland anniversary, and I see some friends out there that has helped organize it with me. This month, I have just completed organizing my first ever New England Gun Violence Prevention Youth-Led Summit down in Boston, which I attended last week. So what was kind of unique about that was that it was 100% youth-led. So from organizing it to facilitating it to booking the rooms to getting the speakers in, it was all powered by the youth of both Springfield and Boston. And what's extremely great about that is that they were all women who organized it. So there was that. And we just kicked off and ended this month. We actually had a Letters to Congress campaign. So what we're doing is we wrote to our congressmen and congresswomen, and we're saying, hey, we are your constituents, we're from Massachusetts, and we're watching your every move. And it's going to entail that you passing common sense gun laws such as H.R. 8, H.R. 1112, and S42, and more to come during this session. So that's what a day in the life of China kind of looks like, yeah.
A few small things. Laura, describe a day in leadership for you.
Sure, it's a tough act to follow. So my day job is economic development work in downtown, basically everything that's not the MGM complex. So sort of making sure that there's strong, vibrant local businesses and community spaces and parks and places that people want to live and all of that. So every day is completely different, constantly jumping between meetings with residents with an idea of something they want to see in the downtown to meeting with the city about, say, policy. There didn't used to be a ability to have outdoor seating, outdoor dining, believe it or not. So something like that, we're working with them to go through the process to get that approved so that restaurants can have outdoor seating downtown, things you just don't really necessarily think about, but that are important to the feel. And then I'm also supporting people in my position that are in different cities across the state. So as Linda said, I work for MassDevelopment, so we're a state agency. So I have counterparts that are in different cities from Holyoke to Pittsfield to Brockton to New Bedford, sort of all over the state. So helping them in this sort of amorphous role that we play in terms of economic development organizing. So that's my typical day job, not a 9-to-5, very sort of full life job. And then work with a few different nonprofits, Make It Springfield, the community makerspace downtown, Gardening the Community on the board, and the cultural district in downtown. So keep busy after hours as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lydia, big job, Lydia. Coming after big job, Laura. Okay.
So every day is different for me. It's all about the children of the city of Springfield and beyond, and really looking to put in different opportunities for the children of Springfield. But what it looks like is usually around 5:30, 6 a.m. I do try to make the gym just because it's really important to stay healthy, and then off to work. Every day is very, very different for us in the Springfield Public Schools because it depends on what's going on in the schools. And so, for example, today we actually had all kind of meetings because as you may or may not know, we're building new schools. On top of educating our children, it is our responsibility to make sure that they have the facilities where to go. We're always looking to do vibrant things for our kids and our communities. So we're building a couple schools as we speak. We're working with MSBA to try and put other schools, DeBerry, in the forefront so that we can get a new DeBerry and Homer school. And so we also go to the schools to meet with the children. We do a lot of read out louds. We do walkthroughs. We ensure that the teachers have everything that they need. We work with our adult ed center to ensure that our parents have a place to go and be educated. So it's something else that I really work with is the adult education center here in Springfield. I'm on the board for Westfield State University to make sure that the children have not just opportunities when they're in school, but also when they leave us. We want to make sure that they're college and career ready. And so really working to do a lot of internships in the city. I work with a lot of you lovely people that are here in the audience right now on a daily basis to ensure that the opportunities are there for our students. So it's never one type of day. One thing that is for sure is that you usually start your day at 6 a.m. and if you get home by 9:30, that's a really good day. And so we really work hard to do those things. And as you heard, I'm also working on my doctorate. So it's important to me to also lead by example. So to show the kids that you don't have to stop after high school or after your bachelor's or your master's or your CAGs. There's always something else to be done. So really making sure that the children understand that I can do it, you can do it. And so it's a really exciting life.
Well, I have no idea when Lydia is working on her doctorate.
Don't tell my
I suspect it could be 3 o'clock in the morning, but so that's fabulous.
Hitting
And now,
send on that
Ruby.
exam.
Ruby,
So-
tell us about a day for you. I suspect there's no typical day for you.
No, there's some typical days in there. I have a day job, so I'm also the study abroad coordinator and study abroad and internship coordinator for Mount Holyoke College, which is where we first encountered.
Yes.
And so my life has really been in this area of international education and experiential learning, which is what I kind of pour into these other areas. So the roles that I carry are those two, as well as being, as mentioned earlier, I'm actually no longer on the board of GTC. It's in very good hands. I see the ED back there and the board member. But I'm currently the co-founder of Leaders of the Free World. And so on a typical day, I'm getting up a couple hours before I have to be at my day job and squeezing some hours in on that and making appointments with like potential partners that we want to work with. Emailing my team. It's kind of a unique situation from, working on GTC. We were super hyper local. Our board was local. And now I have, board members and a co-director that's like spread across the country. And our students come from across the country. And it's a challenge as well as an added benefit because we learn to communicate differently, and it also means that we also pull from from all of these areas where people are and can contribute to this vision. So it's communicating with those folks, and then going off and advising students who are thinking about going abroad for the first time and never having left before. Which, I took that role because it does relate to my Leaders of the Free World work, which, by the way, Leaders of the Free World, for those of you who may or may not know, I know you all should know something about gardening the community, I should hope by this point. If not, please go there. But Leaders of the Free World is about leadership development and international experience for young Black men. I know a lot of folks, especially in this room, I say, well, why men? Why Black men? Don't they have everything? And what about women? 12 years Mount Holyoke College, women's education. I have put in my time, but that is where we do see the need. So when I first went abroad in 2010, that was the first time, and to Ghana, it kind of really changed my life, did a lot of things, but I also saw that it was really inaccessible. I saw that the young men in my family who were full of potential, but maybe not making necessarily the best decisions. And for me, it was knowing that there were a lot of programs out there, a lot of spaces like this that exist to uplift women and do a lot for women. I worked at a school for women, but I didn't see a whole lot out there that were trying to help young men, particularly young Black men. And when I looked at the numbers and the statistics, knowing that they were at the bottom demographic when it comes to access to international education, access to any kind of study abroad opportunities, and but also lagging behind in all of these other areas. So my work continues to be helping people try to connect to the best parts of themselves, helping people connect to their potential, their purpose, and figuring out ways to push that out into the world and empower other people, either through Leaders of the Free World, Gardening the Community, Mount Holyoke College. That's what I do.
So thank you. I think you make an excellent point, Ruby, that strong women can advocate for men, and we need to do that too, because we need strong men for us. So now I would like to do a little bit of a thought experiment, starting with China Lee, high school senior. China Lee, I would love you to tell us who you are now, what your goals are, your passions, what are your dreams, and what do you imagine being 10 years? Where do you imagine being 10 years from now? What will you be doing in your mind's imagination?
So actually, as of this fall, I will be attending Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. So hopefully once I'm there, I think my freshman year, I am going to be double majoring in government and psychology with a concentration in civic engagement, and then applying into their College of Social Studies major, which is essentially pre-law. And from there, I hope, I'm only going to be a freshman in the fall, so it might be a big change for me. From there, I hope to attend law school after graduating from Wesleyan. So it's another 4 years on top of that 4 years of school and top of the 12 years I'm doing right now. But in 10 years, I hope to be in a space where I could give back to my community. I know that's what a lot of my work right now is centered as, gun violence is a thing that it's not only plaguing our nation, but it's plaguing our city. I was in DC in December, and there was a survivor network going on, and I heard this mom from Springfield talk about losing her nephew and her son all within the same month from gun violence. And it really struck me that no matter where I go, a piece of home is always with me. And it's what I feel when I hear these stories, when I see these mothers, when I meet people going to vigils saying that, even in the state that has some of the most strictest gun laws, there are still hundreds and thousands of deaths occurring in our city, in our state, every single year. So I hope, now I'm trying to combat that, but in 10 years, I hope I, obtain even more skills and just find a better way to help combat this issue that's going through our city right now.
So I really relish, thank you, the stories of women's journeys, which is why I'm asking her to start and project a journey for us. But some journeys are clearly set out and followed. Others seem to have unexpected twists and turns. Seems so true. I see nodding recognition. So I'm going to ask these other panelists to briefly, if you can, a minute or so, who were you in high school? Let's start with Ruby. Let's go this way. What were you thinking in high school, and how did you what was that journey, as much as you can, as briefly as you can, straight on, twists and turns, who were you and how did you get here now?
Yeah, I didn't like high school. It was, there were big parts of it that were pretty horrific experience. It's like, oh gosh, all of it. So I did not want to go to college. I had no plans. I was pretty adamant I would debate people on the merits of why should I go to college. Yeah, I was a C minus probably averaging student. Oh yeah.
Thank you for your candor.
Yeah, this was just like, oh, high school, no. There were things that I learned. I was the first graduating class out of SciTech, yay. So being there, we had access to like technology that we never had before, so that a lot of schools didn't have, but so it was those things that allowed me to advance after I graduated, but that was me in high school. There was no plan to do any of these things.
But you did them.
I did them. I had a best friend who was going to Western New England College, and I didn't want to be left behind. Yeah, literally that was all it was about. He's going off to college. I don't want to be left behind, so I signed up for like HCC, I think literally a couple weeks before it started. And HCC is an awesome, awesome, awesome place that understands getting to students where they are, making education accessible, financially, physically. Like they gave us free, transportation-wise, getting there all around till I got to the point where I could like stand on my own, like, oh, okay, yes, okay, yeah, But had it not been for places like that, there's so many barriers. That's when things started to change for me.
Thank you. So I hear you evolved.
I evolved.
You hurdled barriers. Lydia, how about your journey? Direct or what?
No, there was no direction at all. Actually, I had the exact opposite. High school were the best years of my life. I loved Tech High, Tigers in the House. And so going to Tech, I was just surrounded by some beautiful, beautiful people. And being a first generation to go to college, I didn't have a lot of people helping me. And so it wasn't until one day when the intercoms were coming out with, where are you going to college, that my mentors actually said, when am I going to hear your name? And I said, never, because I hadn't applied to anywhere. But lo and behold, they took me to Westfield State College, University, woohoo, urban ed. And they accepted me like right on the spot. And even then, I didn't know who I was going to be because I didn't think of college. But then when I entered, I thought computer science, that was the wave of the future back then. And when I got there, it just wasn't for me. And I went into business. And lo and behold, from a young girl that was not going to college, I got my bachelor's degree in 3 years because I loved school so much. And so it was just that passion. But even being here, assistant superintendent of Springfield Public Schools, what? Never. And when I came to Springfield and took on the job of a substitute, at that time it was to make ends meet. I never thought that I was going to fall in love with it. And then lo and behold, that experience just kept leading me. And people always ask me, are you going to the top? And at every level that I got to, I said, no, this is it. Like, this is it. So if you want to know about twists and turns, I had more than twists and turns. But here I am. And people ask me today, are you going to be superintendent? Are you going to be superintendent? And right now, I'm like, I love being the assistant superintendent. And so we'll see what the future brings. I don't think I ever had a full plan. I just knew I had to get out there, and I knew I had to succeed. And I knew that I had to pave the way for others. And then, I met so many beautiful people along the way, and they exposed me to other experiences. And then it was all those exposures and all those experiences that made me who I am today. And some of my friends are here today because I couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you, everybody.
Hooray. Okay. So Laura, how about your evolution? Where did you start out?
So high school, I think so probably somewhere in between the two of you. Really enjoyed some of the academics, but didn't love the social scene. And always sort of had college in my mind as that's where I'll find my people. I think it also helped that my dad was a college professor, so that was just part of my track. From day one, and my mom is a nonprofit director teaching decision-making skills to women in prison. And so from middle school, I was exposed to I was going into the prison with her, going to her classes, and I was meeting people who had family members who were killed, but who were against the death penalty, and I'm like exposed to, that kind of social justice stuff pretty young. So I knew that was something that was really important to me no matter where I ended up. And I think I always wished that I had a really clear path or profession in mind, but I never did. So I never wanted to be a doctor, I never wanted to be a lawyer. I had no idea where I would end up. But I think on the other side of it, I'm now in a job where I'm using so many different skills. Like that's why I'm able to do it. It's like, I'm not a specialist in anything, but I can do a little bit of a lot of different things. So I think coming into my own in that and saying like, that's not a weakness, that's just the way I operate. And I think my first job in high school was working at a Mexican popsicle store owned by two sisters from Guadalajara. And who knew, again, you never know where you're gonna end up. But that experience, I worked with them for a couple years, and now 15 years later, I still am working with small businesses, a lot of small food businesses, that are run by women and immigrant women and women of color. And you never know. That was a random, just like, oh, I love this little shop, I want to work there. And now, since then, I've done a lot of work around entrepreneurship training for disadvantaged populations all across the country, and now have really focused on the section of Springfield. But yeah, you never know how it's going to sort of curve back.
I see a lot of nodding around the idea of how, as Robert Frost said, way leads on to way. And it is really something to be enthusiastic about, I think, given this experience. So, Lydia, I heard you mention people who helped you and mentors. So I would really like to now turn to that question of mentors. Would you talk about an experience of being mentored that meant something important to you? What impact did that have specifically on your life or your career? Let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think my whole career, my whole life has been around mentors. And some of them didn't even realize they were mentoring me. It was just, friendships that evolved. But the one that really started me on the path of believing in mentors was in high school. Like I said, I wasn't going to college. I didn't know how to apply. I didn't have anyone that said, Lydia, you can do this. It was more like, oh yeah, okay, she's gonna graduate, until, Millie Barrett, who was an algebra teacher at Tech, and Chief Palmer, who was our ROTC instructor at Tech also. The two of them were the first two people, I think, on earth that noticed me, like really, truly noticed me. And so I got into student council with Miss Barron, and then I got into ROTC with Chief Palmer, and I just gave them both my all, because that's who I am, and I just really belonged in high school. And so I tried to do everything that I could to make high school a better experience for others, because I was actually bullied in junior high. And when you see my pictures in junior high, you're like, there is no way that is you. But under their wing, I went there in 9th grade, and under their wing, they just really didn't let me quit, ever. I mean, I had perfect attendance in high school, and yes, I had to walk. I was within that 2 miles to get to Tech, but I still walked it every day, and even when I didn't have to go to school, I wanted to, because they were so awesome at just making sure that everything that we needed at Tech was there for us. And then I just followed their lead because I believed in them. And then my mom let me follow their lead because she believed in them. And so when those announcements came up, I mean, the reality is that they both came to me that day and said, Lydia, when am I going to hear your name? And when I said neither, they got together and called Westfield State, Dr. Kamal Ali, who became another mentor of mine. And so they called, and the next day, I'm sitting at Westfield State University filling out an application to get into college because it's where I was supposed to be according to them. And they never let me go until the day that they passed away. They held me close, and they checked up on me, and they made sure that I was okay, because they saw that young girl that didn't have a way to go. And then I've never stopped having mentors since or learning from individuals. And some people think I'm mentoring them. They don't realize they're mentoring me back. And that's what mentorship to me is about. It's about a give and take. It's about a sharing of experiences. It's about believing in each other and seeing things in each other that you didn't see in yourself, and then really cultivating that. And the wings just expand, and before you know it, you're the assistant superintendent of Springfield Public Schools, and you still pinch yourself every day and say, how did that happen? So mentorships to me, mentors, I think that is the noblest of all professions, when you take someone that, especially when they don't believe in themselves, and you help them to believe in them, because they can do it. Everybody can do it. And you hear the cliches about aim for the stars, land on the clouds. It's true. Just hop, because you're going to end up somewhere. So mentors to me are, I take my hat off to them every single day, and it's a give and take.
So I want us to feel comfortable being informal in our rotation, and I don't think everyone has to speak fully to every question. So would anyone else like to address this idea of mentorship, being mentored?
I'll do one real quick and then jump in for sure. I was lucky enough, my last two bosses were really strong women who I was able to work with and learn from, and were this perfect combination of supportive, but also sort of the kick you out the door, like just do it. So there were multiple times where I would be thinking about something and trying to get, take the makerspace as an example. I thought about this idea, had been talking with people about it, but felt like there were too many things that hadn't fallen into place to really jump in. And my boss at the time just said, like, you're never gonna be ready. You just got it, like, just do it. You'll figure it out. And the worst case, it was an experiment that you tried. And that was a 1-month pop-up project that now has been open for almost 3 years. And it's one of those things where you never know, but you thanks to a lot of people in this room who are also leaders in that group. But I think just having people in your life who can play that little sort of push you when you're just unsure or feel, whether it's self-doubt or just questioning or overthinking perhaps. I think that has been a really key part of my leadership development.
Right. So I think I'm seeing lots of potential and probably actual mentors in the audience. And this is how important it is. It's really validating. Anyone else want to speak to a mentored, being mentored experience?
Yeah, I'll also be brief in that. I don't know how I would have gotten this far if it hadn't been for folks sort of, like you said, seeing you for the first time. When I was at, HCC, it was, the Joanna Brown, who just kind of would take me on field trips to visit alums in the area and like, what do you want to do? And just asking you, in ways that I hadn't really thought that I had agency before. And so it's the mentors that are above you, but it's also a lot of your peer mentors. Like, I've been a part of communities, finding my tribe, finding my group of folks who are doing similar work and who had similar challenges and were willing to be giving and willing to be helpful. So it's those mentors above that have helped, but also my peer mentors that have been extremely helpful.
Yes.
And my mom.
Jean-Lee, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I actually have a mentor in the crowd today, Jam. She was my camp counselor for quite a long time. And I remember just seeing her every day, going to camp in the summer, seeing her all happy in the work she does and interacting with us, and just saying, like, I want to be that happy when I work, when I do whatever I want to do when I grow up. I want to be just like Jam, because she was the best camp counselor I've ever had. And that's something I hold so dear to me now, is that wherever I go, I always have to make sure that I'm staying open-minded in what I'm doing, and that I'm genuinely enjoying what I'm doing. So the spaces I go to, the people I meet nowadays, the other youth involved in GVP, I have to keep an open mind, saying, like, we can learn so much from each other as youth, because there's this problem affects, urban communities, suburban communities, and rural communities, and we all have diverse backgrounds. None of our stories are the same, but here we are united against one issue that's hurting our country so bad, and it's learning from those other perspectives that help you grow as a person.
Thank you. So I'd like to think a little bit about risk. And Laura, I think you expressed in a previous conversation that you had something to say about a time when you actually took a risk to propel yourself forward. What did that feel like?
What did it feel like? I think it's that combination of
And how did you get up your courage to do that?
the mentors were
Okay.
key piece. I think the vision and just believing in what you're doing. So seeing the need, and I think that the same token of what you were saying, Lydia, about never having imagined yourself being in that role. Like if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be one of the co-founders of a makerspace, I would look at you and be like, yeah, you have me confused with someone else, because I have no expertise in that. I don't know how to do any of those things. But I think that realization of you see the need, you see the opportunity, you start to gather people who really want to make it happen with you. And you just sort of focus on how to make it happen and try and keep the nerves and doubts to the side.
And so risk wasn't really that risky because you had the skills that you needed.
Some of them.
You were saying some of them. But you were out
Still
there on some
developing many of them.
You were pedaling fast.
Yeah.
Yes. How about how would you assess the ability to take a risk, anyone else, as part of what drove you or propelled you forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's key a lot of times, and almost all the work that we do, when I first started out, it's just like none of it's guaranteed. You're not guaranteed to succeed, get the funding, get the student, none of it's guaranteed, and once you understand that, it's just like walking on faith, you try anyway. And knowing that it could all crash and burn. No, but it's an exercise in faith, and it is risk, and it's just like you're either going to learn or you're going to lose. Learn or lose. You're either going to win or you're going to learn. There's really not going to be a loss. I'll learn how I failed this time, and so how I can do it better next time. But I won't know how much I can succeed or how better I can do it if I don't put myself out there anyway and risk, taking that hit.
So Lydia, I think you've talked about risks. I don't know if you want to add anything to this particular.
Risk to me equals learning.
Okay.
Like you have to take that risk to learn. If you're afraid to learn, you're not going to take the risk. And every day that I open my mouth, it's a risk, right? Because you don't know how people are going to take that. And so risk is a part of growing. Risk is a part of learning. And you're never going to make it to the next level without taking that risk. You're just not.
So you're hearing this. I think in your young life, you've probably taken some risks, but you're probably about to take a lot more. What do you think about risk? How valuable is taking a risk?
So me and my mom have a pretty close relationship. So everything I do, it goes to her. I explain to her, and it's literally, that's too big of a risk. You shouldn't do that. You're still under my roof. You're still 17. You're not an adult yet. It's too big of a risk. So I think in ways it's held me back, but in ways I look back now and the stuff my mom says, you shouldn't do that at your age. Like, she's another mentor in my life, and she sees having so much experience, and like these women in the panel having that experience that comes with life and being in life for as long as possible. They know the risk and the rewards with every opportunity, and I think it's really important to weigh that out. I mean, I feel like I'm taking a risk going an hour away from home next fall. But it's going to pay off in the long run. I really believe it is. So taking little risks every day, whether my mom knows it or not. Most of the time she does. but just stepping outside of your comfort zone and taking those risks to find out who you really are, what your passion is, and it's really going to shape the road you take in life.
Thank you. So I would like to spend a little bit of time on what can be a difficult subject, and that is that we've all had disappointments in pursuing our goals. I assume then, being human, that would be our universal condition. And in fact, some of us have had outright failures, even epic fails, and I can claim at least one of those myself. So I wonder if you panelists would share your experiences in confronting disappointments, in confronting failure. How do you learn? People have talked about risking is learning. How do you learn from a bad experience? How do you move past that? And how do you cultivate your own resilience? Who wants to start?
Started last time. Go ahead, Laura.
So generous.
As I said, this is tough stuff, but I think we all really deal with that. And because our culture so values strength, if I may opine, I think that to admit failure, to admit any kind of vulnerability is difficult, but I think it's essential if we're not just putting on masks, if we're really here to learn from each other.
Totally.
So,
Yeah.
do you have a good failure you could share with us?
Yeah, well, so I'll take one just from the last few years of working here. I think I'm constantly trying to figure out how to fill storefronts in downtown with businesses, with community spaces, with creative uses, and I really invested in one of them and realized that I brought a bunch of people together to be a part of it. We got funding, there was sort of all the steps in place, but I realized I was really forcing it, where the other folks that were involved were not clicking, and I was the one sort of holding it together. And I realized probably too late that I should let it go. But I think that was one of those experiences of realizing like timing is everything. Trust your gut when you feel like I'm working too hard to keep this together. This is not going to be able to survive beyond me, and I think that puts way too much pressure on yourself too. And it's not a functional partnership. So I think that was the biggest takeaway recently that I've experienced from a failure, missed opportunity kind of thing.
So everyone should not feel duty-bound to speak, but now Lydia's got her mouth open, so go.
I'm just going to say that, when I look at failures, again, and I know I sound like an educator, it's who I am, but to me, you have to fail to learn. And so it's a matter of just taking that failure and weighing it. Will it matter a week from now, or will it not?
Beautiful.
And is it something that you failed at that has to occur? You gotta get yourself up. I can remember a real quick story. I was in college and it was like 2 a.m. and I had a paper due and I didn't have it due and I was just a mess. And I was in school, I was working 2 jobs and I was working on my master's at the time. And I recall just getting so frustrated and I lost it. And I just kind of took everything and quit. At 2 a.m. that night, I quit. And my husband just kind of, when I woke up in the morning, he had taken all my books and he had taken everything and he had made it a nice pile for me. And he made me breakfast and he woke me up in the morning and he said to me, "You ready?" And I was like, "Yes." And I went off and kept it going. But right then and there, if I didn't have that structure, it would have been a failure because I would have quit. And quitting was not an option. It still isn't. So to me, again, failing means weighing those pros and cons and was it worth it? And if not, then keep going. And if it doesn't mean anything next week, let it go.
Great. Ruby, any wisdom on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, it's like I always feel like there's always seeds to learning in those setbacks. And one quick scenario in particular was, I remember at one point I was like, looking for jobs, and like, you know, I had came close a couple times, and I remember hearing back from both jobs, one, no, from both places, but both places being kind enough to give me feedback and saying like, we don't feel that you have this particular thing. It seems like your strengths are over here, but they're not where we need them to be. And in that moment, hearing both places say the same thing, I had been thinking about, I want to do this Leaders of the Free World thing, but I need to know this, and I need to know that this project is like 3 to 5 years down the line. And these places where both places were telling me no, and I'm like, what they're telling me is, you actually have the skills right now to do the thing that you're trying to do, but you're denying it. And I'm like, and so it's in that rejection, in that failure, I was also learning seeds about myself and what was really needed to happen. So yeah, lessons.
Lessons, and confront them, and don't be afraid to admit that you didn't get where you wanted to go.
Right, it
and
wasn't where I was supposed to be.
Figure it out. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Annalie, do you have it?
Yeah, so originally I actually wasn't supposed to be working at Mass Mutual. I went to my first 2 interviews for 2 different internships there, and I just remember being extremely nervous. I think I was 14 at the time, walking into this company where everybody was older than me. You know, my first ever blazer I was wearing, and I remember sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, IT, like, all I do is help create schedules at my school, and like my palms were sweating, like my knees were shaking under the table. I'm like, oh, I hope they don't notice. But I didn't get those 2 internships, but I did know the people who were interviewing me at that time, so I reached out to them. I was like, is there any way I can get some feedback, you know, to grow as a person and, you know, maybe take another shot next time? And what they told me is that I really just needed to be more confident in my abilities, because they could tell I was nervous. You know, they're saying just because you're a young 14-year-old girl doesn't mean you don't have a lot to contribute onto the table. So I think about 3 weeks later, I get an email, and they're like, we looked at your resume, and there's actually a 3rd spot that opened up in this whole other department that's not under IT, that the manager really wants to talk to you. And I remember going into that interview and saying, I have to be confident in what I do, because at the end of the day, the way I portray myself is the way I'm going to be seen in this world. So I remember going in there, and I was like, my name's China Lee.